Well, good morning or good evening or good afternoon, wherever you might be in the world. Uh, it is such an honor to be invited to moderate this virtual, what I'm going to call a fireside chat with you, Robert Chagulani Setamu. I practiced.
Thank
Otherwise known
you.
by your
You got it
stage name
right.
as, did I get that right?
You got it right.
Beautiful. Well, you're otherwise known by your stage name is Bobiwine,
Sure.
Ugandan politician, activist, singer, actor, businessman, philanthropist. You are the subject of a profile, award-winning documentary, Bobiwine, The People's President, directed by Moses Boyo and Christopher Sharp, produced by Christopher
Yes,
Sharp and
please.
John Batset. And I'm told, and what I have seen, is that this film is an intimately gripping, raw, and empowering verite of an unlikely hero, a pop star turned politician, whose inspiring
Sure.
activism for his country's democracy is met with brutal and deadly opposition. Welcome, brother, and much
Thank you
respect
for
to you
having me,
for your
sister.
courage. Much respect.
Appreciate. Thank you.
So, yeah, I'm going to do things a little bit differently. Since it's just you and I today, I'd like us to engage in a very informal conversation, if you don't mind. So, imagine me sitting in your living room, having a cup of tea. Your wonderful wife Barbara.
Did you say cup of tea?
You see, I like it. We're already doing it. I have some water, but that's okay. I do not need the water today. But yes, we're going to take this in a very, very informal way.
Sure.
So how does that sound for you? Is that good?
That's good. That's good.
Okay. Beautiful. So I have to say, I watched your film and I was just quiet for quite a while. And when I was preparing for this conversation, I said to myself, the thing that came to mind was Nigerian novelist and feminist Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, in her infamous TED Talk. She shares how our lives and our cultures are composed of many overlapping stories, and warns that if we only hear a single story about another person or country, we run the risk of critical misunderstanding. And states that if all she knew about Africa were from popular images, she would only think that Africa was a place of beautiful landscapes, beautiful animals, incomprehensible people fighting senseless wars, dying of poverty and AIDS, unable to speak for themselves, and waiting to be saved by a kind and white foreigner. So, in watching your film, I was deeply moved, and it wasn't only by the determination of freedom and the vagrant display of injustice, but this feeling of Ubuntu, and Ubuntu being the Zulu word that loosely is defined as I am who
Humanity.
I am. Yes, because of who we are. Yes.
Yeah.
It's an expression of humanity to others, which some of the core values are survival, spirits of solidarity, compassion, respect, and dignity.
Sure.
So in making this film, I see you as a griot. You are the storyteller, the praise singer, the poet, the musician shaping our histories, and you are the valiant warrior of many people on this mission. And I believe that a person, before they can define their goal, they have to know how to define their vision, and first have to know how to define themselves. So who are you, Robert Bobiwine?
Thank you. Who am I? Interestingly, I'm just another ordinary 41-year-old man. You know, if it was outside Africa, I would be a young man, but because I live in a population of 45 million and 85% is under 35 years old. So I'm an old man in Uganda. I am an artist, a family man. I'm a father of 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, and I want to regard myself as a freedom fighter. Whatever that means, I stubbornly stick to what I believe in, and I stubbornly refuse to believe that I am any less than anybody else. I refuse to be defined by what other people think. I look at the happiest human being, and I believe I deserve to be as happy as that, and so does everybody else. So I do what I do to free myself and to free others. I do what I do to change my life and to change the life of others. That is how I can describe myself.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wonderful, powerful. Let's go back a little bit further into your childhood. Often I've read a lot of things that will immediately define your early childhood as coming from the ghetto or living in the slums. But how do you share about what you learned and what you grew from in that space and being in in a space where there was very little means, but at the same time you were focused, even though you're a bit of a ragamuffin, yes, as you claim. But tell us a little bit about your parents.
I actually come from a great historical family, at least according to the stories that I had my mom tell me, not what I saw. Yeah, but she used to tell us that once upon a time we came from this noble family, but everything fell apart in 1980 when the war started. And my family was part of that war. My father and my grandfather were part of that war. Now, I was born in 1982 in the middle of the war, and I just grew up, later on when the war ended, and found myself in the ghetto with our mother, and she was telling us it's politics, bad politics that ended us in the ghetto. Always taught us to work so hard to be able to change our circumstances. And I grew up, working hard and thinking ahead. And by the grace of God and the ancestors, we made it out of the ghetto. However, after becoming a star, a fashionable young man who sings about this and that, the party, the dance, everything, I, encountered some life-changing experience where I was attacked by a security man my age, but because he was positioned, and he beat me up because I was driving a new Cadillac Escalade, accusing me of showing off and taking all the attention from the girls. So that is when I learned that I must do more than just flossing, more than just becoming a popular artist, because regardless of how popular I was, I couldn't be safe until everybody's safe. Now that and many, I'm just trying to be brief on how I grew up and how I transformed to what I am today.
Right. Well, let me tell you, we don't have to be brief here, because I really want people to get a sense of who you are. I think, as a filmmaker, there's only but so much we can put into 2 hours. And from what I understand, there was 4,000 hours of footage.
Oh, yeah.
Over the course
Indeed, that footage, actually, if I must go a little bit more in detail, it did not only look at the positive or the transformation or the inspiring part of me. It also captures when I was a young man with a limited sense of direction, where violence defined me, where artistic beef, defined me, where a certain degree of indiscipline defined me. I'm very happy that I was able to grow through those times, but that was also a certain part of my life, that I wouldn't say I'm not proud of, but I'm proud of the story. You can only be proud of a bad story if it turns out good.
Yes.
Yeah.
What role would you say that education played for you? Because, when we talk about people in just dire hard situations, and, we say education is the key in some ways, but it's very hard to think about opening up a book and taking your exams and going through, you don't, it's hard to see the goal at the end of the day. It's easier to see, especially if we're talking about the youth and we're talking about, the cars and the music and the dance. And it's very, it's very flashy, and it seems easy. And we all know in entertainment it's not easy. It requires a lot of work. But going back into those early years when you're seeing, there's an easy way out, there's a hard way out, right? And even what seems to be the easy way out is not always the easy way out. But to talk about education, I'm glad you talked about the means that your family, like the stories that you've heard before your family was in the condition that they were and you living in the slums. But talk about what was put into you in terms of education, because you didn't have to. You could have become a musician without going to university, quite frankly, right?
Yeah, very much so. And I'm very glad that I grew up quite close to my mother, and she
Mm.
made me promise so many times that I would study and complete. Very unfortunately, she was not alive to watch me graduate, but she instilled the value of education in me. And indeed, education was the only thing that set me apart from many of my contemporaries when we were growing up in the ghetto. Having embraced the value of education, I had to hustle to make ends meet and make sure that I go through secondary school, high school, and university as well. I first went to university to study social sciences, and I was majoring in political science and anthropology. But I was a private sponsored student, and many times I failed on my tuition. So I studied that course for only 2 years and I dropped out. But lucky enough, by that time, there was an opportunity at the university. The Department of Music, Dance, and Drama was admitting, and it was called mature age entry. And one had to have experience. So the interview was both practical and written. And the practice was to sing and act and dance, which I had naturally. But it had also a written part. Long story short, I had that interview and I passed the interview and I was admitted to study on government sponsorship. My year was the last year for art student to study on government sponsorship. This elevated my confidence so much that I always looked at myself as a refined ghetto youth. I always looked out at people like Jay-Z, all those, entrepreneurial artists, and it helped me that even in the ghetto, after doing my first song, I had a bigger vision for my self and the friends that I had around me. So I established a crew in the ghetto. It was called Firebase Crew, and that later on became Firebase Entertainment, a record label that I run even now, although now my music has been banned. But that education also opened me to different knowledge, because courtesy of my education, my lyrics were different. I was addressing not only entertainment things, but also revolutionary details. It gave me the knowledge, which knowledge even today I run on. So without education, I strongly believe I wouldn't be where I am. Actually, it is on that background that I was able to go back to university and study a law course, which I'm graduating from, in a short while from now. I would say education, yes, talent is important, but training, namely education, is equally or even much, much more important.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things you said in the movie, you made a comment and you said during that time you didn't really have many dreams, so many dreams, which I found really interesting. And it made me question the feeling of do you let your circumstances dictate your dreams, dictate, your feelings of what more can you have? You said something about, just get some money, get your house, and you'll be fine.
A small car and I'll be fine.
Yeah.
Of course, with the limited circumstances, limited opportunities, you don't have so much.
Yeah.
To dream for,
Right.
So in the film, when this girl came into my life, I got challenged to think more, to see myself in a bigger image. And when the knowledge that I'd gotten also in school and on the street, and also the knowledge that she came with and the inspiration, boom, everything else is history now.
Yeah, yes. Let's talk about that girl, that girl, Miss Barbie, as she's known by everyone. Your wife, your partner, your better half, right? And the person who brought out the vulnerability in you. Let's talk about her.
Well, I would say she came with so much. First of all, looking at her and coming from the ghetto and looking at the decent home where she came from, I had the sense of inferiority. So even when we became friends, I always had a sense of not deserving. But when she challenged me, it proved to me that I was not only worthy this girl, but worthy even greater things in life. One time I eavesdropped on a call with her mother. Her mother was advising her never to settle for less. Now, guess what? That advice came straight in my ears, and I never settled for less. So here we are. She made me believe that I'm probably greater than the guy that I saw myself in, greater than the jeans I was wearing then and the small ghetto house where I was staying. You know, like I said, my dream was just to have a small house and comfortable and a meal every day. But she made me see greater things, and I continue to see greater things in myself every day.
Yeah, I really adore seeing that footage. That's old footage of you all on stage. I mean, how apropos that you guys met doing a play called what was it, Woman, Lady, Will You Marry Me? Was it?
Lady, Will You Marry Me? Oh yeah, and I was acting as president, and she was acting as the first lady.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh
wow.
yeah.
Wow.
So
now that's
that's destiny, you know.
Yes, that is foreshadowing in a huge way. Wow, that's a very interesting additional facts there. So okay, so already you were testing the waters, and then you married the girl, right?
And then I married the girl.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So, you know, I feel like she brought up the vulnerability and all this charisma that you had, and you know, inspired a vision for you. So I've read that the people have called you the ghetto president. How did the ghetto president evolve to the people's president, would you say?
Well, the ghetto president, when I was much younger, in the ghetto, I was the most educated among my contemporaries. So when it came to reading the news in English, the newspaper was always brought to me. And when it came to solving issues, I offered leadership. And I also happened to be the leader of the band or the crew. In that hood, it more or less came naturally ordained that I offered the leadership without knowing. It was more like a brotherhood, and I was more like an elder brother. But there is that time when the ghetto youth started being politically interested, not politically cautious, but politically interested, and they even stopped regarding, you know, the government as ruling over them. They said, wait, the ghetto is a different government because we have different problems and different thoughts, and those people don't even care about us. So before I knew, they were regarding me as the ghetto president. And it somehow grew. You know, they started calling me Mr. President. And I embraced it. But for a long time, it was just artistic and rather unserious. And probably that's how those that rule over us allowed us to exist, because it was not taken serious. We used to, you know, smoke weed, and it was a public thing, and we would not shy away from bar brawls or public fights as young men in their mid-20s. So that, in a way, made us appear less serious, although we were doing noble things like sensitization, sanitation, communicating about this and that, but the way we carried ourselves would not earn us the seriousness, and therefore could not land us in harm's way. And for more than about 15 years, I was called the ghetto president. And even when General Museveni was meeting me always, he would say president and laugh around it. When I was meeting the military general, they would say, oh, ghetto president, and they would laugh about it. So it was more like a joke. And I existed until 2017 when I said, yo, for so long we've been asking you to consider us, you don't. Now that the parliament refused to come to the ghetto is coming to the parliament. So I ran for MP I won. I took 80% of the vote. Now, in this election, there was a government candidate and the main opposition candidate, and the president of the country and the main opposition leader were campaigning in my constituency. But I beat all of them and got 80% of the vote. This communicated very strongly. I said, maybe people have been taking us more serious than we take ourselves. So that is when it was made even more official that there's no more things that are going to create prejudice about us. We're not going to have any more alcohol in the ghetto. We're not going to have any more cigarette or weed smoking in the ghetto. We're not going to have any more violence in the ghetto. We are going to present ourselves in the way that people see hope in us. We're going to address serious issues in a serious way. That is how I even ended up losing my dreadlocks.
Wow. What you were saying is so inspiring, because I think it's really important, especially for youth, people to feel like they don't have options, to see this journey, to hear this journey of yours, and also how you started to make that shift and evolve. You know, I'm thinking, as you mentioned, you know, you first ran for member of parliament, and then at the point where you decided, like, you know what, I'm going to go all the way through, you know, and in watching the documentary actually does a really great job of first showing what that first step and what you were doing to make changes as a member of parliament. But then at the point where you felt, you know, after having been assaulted, that, you know what, I'm going to make a challenge. I'm going to make a run for this presidency. I think about I'm sorry.
Sorry, you were concluding.
Oh, what came to mind when I was watching that reminded me a little bit of Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, and at the point where he had to tell her that, okay, I'm going to run for president of the United States. And so with everything that you knew that this run could create, you know, you knew would not be easy. I'm sure you didn't know the extent, you know, as we've seen in the documentary, the extent to what then happened. But at the point where you're thinking, okay, I'm going to run for office, how did you approach Barbie about this idea, to do this? Or, you know, I'm just curious to get a sense of, like, because as a father, as a husband, but also, as you said, a man for your community, you had a lot of responsibilities and you were taking on a lot of responsibilities, but making that decision to do something that nobody has somehow been able to do for 35 years. How was it for you being able to make that? How did you approach it with the idea? Let's put it that way.
Now, let me first take it a little bit back to the member of parliament. My idea was to cause chaos in that parliament. My idea was to cause attention by the ghetto youth to the parliament, because for so long they were disconnected and did not even care how they are governed or what is decided on their behalf in the parliament. So I wanted to be in parliament so that they follow up on the proceedings. And we achieved that in the first 1 month when I was in parliament. However, I realized that the parliament was being used by General Museveni. He did not have the power at all. However, my turning point was when General Museveni brought a bill to change the constitution and allow him run for this, I think, 6th term. Yeah, because by the time I went to parliament, our constitution had an article that was to the effect that after the age of 75, a person is no longer eligible to run for president. However, General Museveni, even after saying that he agrees with that, and at 75, somebody is not in the best mental capacity to run a country, he moved to change the constitution, and he did that violently by raiding the parliament, beating all of us, abducting some of us, and you know, paying off the rest. Then they changed the constitution. So when General Museveni changed the constitution and said he's going to run again, myself, my team, and many other opposition leaders said we need somebody who is as popular or even more popular to challenge General Museveni. And they pointed at me. I cannot say I was ready. I cannot say I was not. I said, if it's going to take me to free this country, here I am. And I threw in my hat. Yeah.
Wow. So you became the face for the people, truly. You were selected by the people for that walk. But how did Barbie handle that when you mentioned it to her? Was she just all in, or what were the things behind the scenes that?
Man, by that time, initially, I'll say that Barbie did not like these things
Hmm.
because Barbie and I had agreed that at age 35 we would retire and go enjoy our sweat since we struggled so much right from the time when I met her, right from the time when you see us acting on those on the stage. We did not have any holidays. We did not go to any dinners or any dance parties. We always worked and worked and worked. And yes, we made a fortune because we were fairly wealthy, I would say. However, at 35, and that is when I got crazy, I said, I'm going into politics. So she was not very welcoming of the idea, although she supported me nevertheless. However, when I was uh, detained and tortured in a military barracks, and Bobby came and looked at me, swollen face, swollen red eyes, swollen lips, broken back. I couldn't sit, I couldn't stand. She said, you know what, Bobby, if this is what we are fighting against, I will never take a step back. And since then, she's the one who wakes me up and said, get up, Bobby, we have freedom to fight for.
Wow.
Yeah.
I look at you all as sort of the modern era Nelson and Winnie, Malcolm X and Betty, Coretta, where you have this young dynamic duo, if you will, partnership, most important partnership. Because, you, as you said, you needed each other, and, rightfully so, as a mother and she's and wife, she was concerned for everyone's welfare, so I can completely understand that. And it's beautiful to witness both of you. Like there's this, I find there's a lot of moments where it felt like not just the two of you, but even your children, you all had just this strength, this I can't really put it into words, but there was a sense of support in a way that you really couldn't, you didn't, and I don't know if I won't say it's the cameras. I think together, when you were all together in spaces, you wanted to make sure the other person knew, like, I've got you, no matter what, I've got you, And then there were moments, I think for me, one of the most poignant moment was, and a vulnerable moment for me, for you, was when the band was racing back after you all were attacked, and your music producer, Dan Magic, was sitting next to you, bloodied and shell shocked. There was a bomb that was thrown in the front of the car, and you all were racing to the hospital. And this was the moment where you were holding on to him, and he was literally just looking out spacey, and you're holding him, and you looked at him and you said, man, I'm sorry, and he didn't respond. He was just staring straight ahead, still in a bit of a shock. And then you said, we shall get through this, my brother. And then he just kind of shook his head. And I just thought to myself, wow. And there was a tear coming down your face. And it was probably one of the only times I think I saw a true moment for you, because you've been so strong. We see you strong, and I'm sure somewhere in those 4,000 other footage is probably moments like that again. But for the sake of that's just this documentary and that moment, I thought it was such a beautiful moment of, because you are human, but you have to be so strong the entire way through. But I want you to tell me about that moment. What was it, when you made a decision, you were elected by the people to take on this task, this journey, this what seems seemingly is unsurmountable moment. But then you're being attacked for running as a president, for running to be a president. And your friend here has not been attacked. And this is the moment you break down in front of people. Enough, you broke down just enough for us to see that it's not just you, it's other people now lives are being lost, as you've been witnessing. But what was that moment like for you, if you can recall, when you see someone right next to you, and how close that could have been for them, as well as yourself?
I'll say that there were actually very many moments like that. Very many. There was a moment when my driver was shot. You know, there's a moment when my close friend, my bodyguard, was run over by a military truck and his skull was crushed. And I held him, I saw him breathe his last. And then there's also a time when my close friend, who was a cameraman, who was moving with me on top of the car, Ashraf, was shot with a projectile, and I saw his brain splash out. There were many, many tough moments. Well, those moments when many of my friends were killed in my face were very tough, but they were not toughest. The toughest moments was when I looked in their mother's face or their father's face, and I have to deliver that news. It was heavy. It is still is, but you know, somehow looking at excuse me.
Yeah.
Okay, looking at where we want to go is the only consolation that the person that I'm holding that can't breathe anymore won't get there. Maybe I might also not get there. Excuse me, please.
It's okay. It's okay. You know, this is,
Yeah,
and
maybe
this is
you
why.
ask me about something else.
No, I understand. I understand. So this is why, why we make movies, we document, we do documentaries, because there's more to the story than what you see on the screen, you know. And like I said, with this conversation, I wanted to get to the man behind, behind the deeper conversation. It's okay. Take your time, brother. Take your time, brother.
No, I'm good.
Yeah, no, I understand. Thank you. Take your time.
Please,
you're among family here. Yeah. You're among family.
Yeah, I'm back.
Yes, yeah. No, it's look, like I said, it's the humanness. It's the Ubuntu here. I am who I am because of who we are. That is what it is, yeah. You know?
Yeah.
There was a quote that you made in the film, or that you recited, I should say, which is the problem of Africa in general and Uganda in particular is not the people, but leaders who want to overstay in power. Who said that?
Yeah, that actually is a famous quote said by General Museveni. He said that in 1986 when he was swearing in as president, 37, coming to 38 years ago. He even wrote that in his book called What is Africa's Problem? He said Africa's problem in general and Uganda in particular are the leaders that overstay in power. He's still in power 38 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you said that quote, you were having a moment of introspection in the vehicle. And I remember you, as you said it, you also said, I'm at war with my once favorite revolutionary. And the idea, and you said if you could sit down with him, you want to ask him what happened. This is somebody who was an icon to you, a hero to you.
Yeah.
And here we are now, and you want to ask what happened. Do you think you could still have that conversation with him after everything you've endured? And what would you hope to achieve if you could?
Well, what I would love, what I would have loved is to appeal to his sense of reason, to his sense of Ubuntu, to his sense of elderness, because in Africa we're brought up to know that to appeal to a sense of responsibility and to appeal to conscience, at least you will appeal to an elder or a mother or a father but to see, or a leader, but to see that this person is all those that I've mentioned, but still finds it necessary to order for a massacre or to order for the abduction of so many people. As we speak now, many of my friends are missing. Nobody knows where they are. So to see, over the time, I've lost hope in General Museveni in appealing to his sense of reason, you know. And I think now it is going to have to be pressure, because we are not going to appeal to his conscience so that he frees us. I've come to believe that we are a business. We are a business, and you know, for the general that rules over us to have more power and more wealth, and ensuring that the same carries on to his son and his grandson or daughter, and the only exchange for that is silencing us and denying us a right to think and determine our own destiny. So I think the price for him is too much to give, because if he gives us our freedom, he loses us. You know, he loses us. Our taxes can no longer facilitate the luxurious lifestyle. Our taxes will have to build hospitals and roads and schools for us. So I lost the hope in appealing to his sense of reason. Yeah, I think we'll have to appeal to the sense of responsibility of every citizen to say, no, we want our freedom, and we are not going to have to appeal to your sense of pity to give us our freedom. We, after all, we were taught by Dr. Martin, freedom cannot be freely given by the oppressor. It must be taken or demanded by the oppressed.
Yeah. You know, watching this film, you know, I find myself having to remind myself while watching it that this was not a war movie, that this was someone running to be a president. You know, in fact, there was a moment when you were roughly pulled into a van, and you were, just before the van pulled away, you were behind the bars, and you were saying, I'm a presidential candidate. I've done nothing wrong. It was such a surreal moment that was captured. And in a way, it kind of, it brings together why documentaries are made, to capture those moments where the surreal, the improbable moments like this happen, so that people can see that, okay, we need to alert the world to this. That's the technology allows for these images to be seen faster and, you know, in more immediate, I should say, and for something to be done. So over the course of 6 years, you have been filmed, and you were approached for this documentary. Why was it important for you to say yes? And who do you think you were saying yes to and for when you said yes to be filmed?
Thank you. This idea was suggested by Christopher Sharp. Interestingly, we had met because he had hired me to perform as a wedding singer for his daughter's wedding.
Oh.
So when I went there, yeah, we had a conversation, and I'd just been elected in parliament. It was my last gig as an artist and my first gig as a honorable member of parliament.
Wow.
So I told him about what was going on in Uganda. He was born in Uganda, and he found the country interesting. He found the story even more interesting. He said, why don't we document this? I said, yeah, maybe. So I started giving, you know, some of my time to him to document, but it got hotter over the years that two of the cameramen had to not only leave the job, but they had to run out of the country because the levels were getting high now. They started documenting long before I even thought I would run for president. As we went on, I discovered even more importance of telling our story, because I realized that it was the only opportunity for us to smuggle our true, authentic, unedited story, Ugandan story, out of Uganda, because the media is highly controlled here, and there's so much money that is put aside to paint a rosy picture of General Museveni's rule. So I saw that that was the only opportunity, and because of that, now we granted full access to all our lives, even the most vulnerable moments were covered. Moses, who was covering, who was the co-director, was staying with us to the extent that after he left, the children are asking, where did Uncle Moses go? You know, yeah. But of course, even him, he had to run out of the country after that, and he cannot step in Uganda until things change.
Yeah, I have to truly give off my hat to the footage. I mean, it was so intimate. Literally being right there in the battleground. It was, like I said, gripping and sensitive and real, raw in so many ways. And but such an important piece of your film to really witness. You know, this is, you can't make it up, and it is important for the world to see, and also I suppose for the legacy of your children, you know, for your legacy, and for them to be able to see their father in action. You know, when he leaves the house, what is he doing? Like I said, your children really your daughter was singing your song about freedom. They know they are part of the struggle. They're the next generation. So that must be really proud for you to see that happening.
Definitely. Definitely. I feel like I've brought them up right. Roughly, but right. Yeah.
You definitely have.
I hate the fact that
you had
no, I was just saying I hate the fact that they are traumatized many times. They've seen their father humiliated. They've been, you know, raided and taken over at home, you know, but, you know, they learn. I teach them early that it is what it is, so that when they see their father is taken to prison, at least they will not think that their father is a criminal.
It's really, it's beautiful to watch. You had the round table, I would call it the round table moment in the film when you decided you're going to send them to the United States for their own safety. And it's interesting, when the camera first showed the scene and you were speaking, I actually thought you were talking to somebody like adults, and then the camera pulled back and you were talking to the children, you know, almost like, we made this decision, but you were talking to them not like children pack up and we're gonna go, but like they were part of your team. You know, you were all part of the same team, and you wanted to speak with them, no matter how, even to the youngest one, but speak with them in a way that they understood what this moment was about. And you see them growing into that understanding and that support with you.
Thank you.
At the premiere of your film at the Venice Film Festival, for the premiere, you received a 10-minute standing ovation. Now, you may not know, maybe, I'm sure you've been told by now, but maybe if you haven't, the more people stand and clap, it means something. It's more than we like you. It's like we really like what we're seeing here. So that 10-minute actually is a bit of a record in terms of like how long the standing ovations have been at the Venice Film Festival. And I was actually watching the video of you standing and receiving this. What was that moment like for you? What does the culmination of these 6 years of being filmed, the 4,000 hours, and you just being yourself, and you knowing your background, you knowing everything you have been through as a youth, with your education, with the people that you grew up with, being the ghetto president, becoming the people's president, all of that, and for you to stand there watch this film. I don't know if I don't know if you saw it for the first time, if you at the festival, if you were able to see a rough cut prior to that. But what was that moment like for you to see this room full of people who've just watched you standing there for 10 minutes and saying to you, "I see you"?
It was a very deep moment and very heavy as well, because at that time, my mind, I was watching the film for the first time. I had never watched it before.
Wow.
It was the first time I was watching it. And man, it threw me back. I had just seen so many people. Many of them are in prison now. Many of them are missing. We don't know where they went. Many of them are in exile, and many of them actually sold out and betrayed us, and they joined the dictator, and they have Jewish positions. Many of them were still together, and my mind was running very fast. And I only had one wish. I wish my friends would be there to share that moment with me. I wish they would know that the world is seeing what happened and what continues to happen back home. So it was only wishes. But I was also very humbled, very, very humbled that I could live to see that moment. You know, I had lived to see that moment. I'd seen it. It was such an accomplishment, but again, such a void in my heart that I wished some of my friends were still living to see that, and others I wish they were with me there. So it was, I had very mixed thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah. That's powerful. Barack Obama had said, the future reward those who press on. I don't have time to feel sorry for myself. I don't have time to complain. I'm going to press on. Do you have any regrets, or is there anything you would have done differently? How do you intend to press on?
I don't have any regrets. I don't have any regrets. If I was to do it again, I don't know if I could do it. I don't know if I would do it, because honestly, I knew that this guy was going to be brutal, but I did not know to what level, because I'd seen they were arresting opposition leaders, throwing them in jail for a week, 2 weeks, 1 month, a year. And I was ready for jail. I was ready for the beatings. I was even ready to be killed, but I was not ready to see innocent people killed. I was not ready to see people abducted and missing, my friends raped. And man, I don't regret, because I know that freedom is not free. And I think the worst has already happened. There's nothing more that can happen that I don't expect. What? Death, prison, abduction, beatings. So they've done everything that they could do. They've not been able to break us. So that means we're going to press on. The next stop is victory.
I love that.
Yeah.
And with that, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for this. I think what you have shared will offer so much more insight to who you are and your family and the struggle for freedom and democracy within your country. Again, I thank you so much for your time. And I hope that everybody who has not seen your film will go and see your film. I hope that your film is taken to universities and studied, and people can really, you know, you are showing the sort of the anatomy of a freedom fighter. You know, even though you are, in terms of like what you just mentioned, in terms of regrets or not regrets, but just know that you have well done, brother.
Thank you very much. God bless.
Okay.